Good morning. My name is Chris Goff. I serve as an Associate Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court, and I've been designated by Chief Justice Loretta Rush to serve as Chair of the Indiana Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council. I'd like to welcome all members and designees of members who are participating in today's JRAC meeting. And I'd also like to welcome any members of the public who might be joining us via live stream. At this time, I would also like to take the opportunity to welcome specifically two new members of JRAC who were appointed during the last legislative session. I'd like to welcome Rick Crawley, the interim CEO of the Indiana Council of Community Mental Health Centers, and Steve McCaffrey, the president and CEO of Mental Health America. We are glad you're able to join us, the council today, and we look forward to working with you. I also want to recognize Judge Darren Dolahanty, who's participating in today's meeting as proxy for Judge Mark Spitzer. Welcome, Darren. And the first item of business this morning will be approval of the June 4th, 2021 meeting minutes. Prior to this morning's meeting, copies of those minutes were circulated to all JRAC members. And if you had an opportunity to review the minutes from June 4th, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
This is Bernice Corley, so moved.
Thank you, Bernice. Is there a second?
This is Devin McDonald, I'll second.
Thank you, Devin. So there's been a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the June 4th, 2021 JRAC meeting as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd call for the question. All those in favor of approving the June 4th, 2021 JRAC minutes as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, I would like to call for a report from JRAC work groups. And the first report I'm going to ask for is a report from the Community Corrections Code Revision Work Group. Mary Kay Hudson, Chris Blessinger on behalf of the Department of Corrections, and several others have been very instrumental in the work group that's met several times over the past few months. The Community Corrections Code Revision Work Group and Subgroup have met several times to conduct a thorough review of the Community Corrections Code provisions in anticipation of a final report, which is due to the Department of Corrections by December 1st, 2021. Each agency has had the opportunity to provide input and recommendations on proposed changes. This group is meeting an additional 3 times before the report is submitted to the full body of JRAC for consideration during our October 29th meeting. If a member of JRAC is not participating in the work group so far, but they would like to provide items for consideration, I want to give everyone the opportunity to please submit emails to either Michelle Goodman or April Dubree for presentation to the work group. And before we move on to the next agenda item, that's a very 30,000-foot report of the work of the work group. Is there anything else that members of the work group would like to report out to the group as a whole? Hearing nothing further, I want to thank everyone who's participated so far and just indicate that it's been a very productive discussion. For our next report out, I would call on Bernice Corley or Steve Luce for a report on the work carried out by the Racial Equity Work Group.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you. Bernice Corley from the Indiana Public Defender Council. I co-chair the Racial Equity Work Group with Steve Luce from the Sheriff's Association. Since our last report, I can share with this group that the work group accepted the scope of work developed by Dr. Lauder. So she will be working with the work group, and the scope of work details working with 3 or 4 counties. We haven't selected them yet. That's the next step. But working with 3 or 4 counties to do some data mapping, as well as lining up what indicators are indicators of disparity in decision-making and kind of building out a system from there. In terms of the next work of selecting counties to work with, the work group will focus on counties that Dr. Louder has worked on through her validation work through the IRAS. So we're meeting sometime in August, I can't remember, but later this month to make those decisions. So that's all I have. I don't see Steve's name, or if anybody else from the work group has anything else they'd like to offer.
Thank you, Bernice, for that report out. And I neglected to ask members for, give them an opportunity to ask questions on the report out on the JRAC subwork group or Bernice's racial equity work group and her report. So I would certainly give you the opportunity to do so. If there's any member of JRAC that has any questions about either of the report outs that have been made thus far, please feel free to speak up. All right. Thank you very much. And next, I would ask for a report out on behalf of the JRAC and Indiana Evidence-Based Decision-Making Work Group. And I'd call on Amber Finnegan and Angie Hensley Langrell for that report out.
Thank you, Justice Goff. The EBDM subcommittee, we've met 3 times since the last JRAC committee, and we're going to continue to meet monthly with Mimi Carter as we move forward with this initiative. So most of the first couple of meetings was just trying to get regrounded as to work that's already been done and making sure we have current members at the table and we have everybody at the table that we need. So if there is anybody on this committee that would like to join this committee, please just reach out to Angie and she can get you set up from that. We're working with Mimi Carter and from the Center of Public Policy, Effective Public Policy, and Cindy McCoy to discuss the proposal that was given to us by the center. And we sent out an addendum to that included some deliverables that we wanted specified within that contract. So it is getting updated with the center and should probably be executed maybe next week. The deliverables in that included strategic planning with evidence-based decision-making for local JRAC implementation and communication materials to local stakeholders to help them, possibly providing a strengths and needs assessment, technical assistance plans, a capacity building plan, and also just some next steps before the end of the contract period is up. So that's what we're working on right now. So our next meeting is scheduled on August the 17th, and we're just going to continue to hopefully continue to move forward and provide some guidance for the local JRACs and then collaboration between them and the state team.
Amber, thank you. Thank you. Very important work that your work group is doing in this area that's so core to our mission. Are there any questions for members of JRAC for Amber? April, do you have the ability then to bring up on your screen share those deliverables that Amber touched on? So I believe that copies of the proposal were also distributed to JRAC members in advance of the meeting. And I wanted April to pull these up because I just think that these deliverables are so important and they're so timely. I'm glad that Senator Talion is on the call, particularly because the report and the work relating to the creation of our local JRACs is going to be so key to our ability to have a state and local partnership with so many of our implementation goals. So what I was thinking of doing is asking if members feel comfortable for a vote of approval for entering into the contract for technical assistance I don't think that it's necessary at this point, but I do think that it might be important to just really highlight the consensus that's kind of built around these goals that are very broad, and will hopefully help us make things better in this area for so many people across the state. Are there any questions for JRAC members?
I'll move to approve the recommendations.
Thank you, Senator Italian. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Justice, I'll second.
Great, thank you, Chris. So we have a motion from Senator Italian and a second from Chris Naylor. Is there any further discussion? And I'm not hearing any, so I'll go ahead and call for the question. All those in favor of lending JRAC approval to the recommendation set out in Mimi's proposal, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And hearing none, so motion carries. And yeah, again, Amber, thank you so much for the report out and the just the really crucial work that you're doing. It's really exciting when you're able to build consensus around some of these issues and move the ball forward. So I appreciate that. If there's no other questions, then I want to move on to the next item of the agenda. There was an interesting housekeeping question that was brought to my attention just minutes before we came on about the applicability of our new open door policy in Indiana. Just by way of preview, seems like old times again, right? We had hoped to go back to all live and in-person meetings, and because of some recent developments with COVID-19 and a kind of widespread proliferation of this Delta variant, we have taken advantage of Governor Holcomb's executive order, which covers us through the end of the month, and went back to a remote meeting for today out of an abundance of caution and concern for the health of our members and the public. But going forward, it was the opinion of our legal counsel within the Office of Judicial Administration that we needed to be covered with a plan in the event we needed to have future virtual meetings. And Senator Italian was, I appreciate her bringing up her question as to whether or not the open door policy, the new policy, actually applied to JRAC. And still getting used to my role, even though I've been in it for 4 years. Back in Wabash, I didn't have so many smart lawyers giving me opinions about the applicability of a policy like this. So if I've got a conflicting opinion about this, my initial thought is that we would probably be best to go forward if we have approval of a policy to cover us in the event that we are covered by the open door rule, I guess I would prefer to have that policy in place so that there was no concern that we might have the business of JRAC interrupted if the worst came to worst and we had to continue under the remote format for a while. So with that sort of tenuous introduction, I want to go back into this agenda item, but if we need to revisit this, I'm happy to do so. And I thank you, Senator Italian, for bringing this to my attention. But due to the recent change in health conditions, the governor has signed an executive order on July 29th, permitting JRAC and other open door meetings to be entirely virtual through August 30th, when the order expires. After this date, JRAC will be subject to the open door laws, which became effective through House Enrolled Act 1437. Portions of the act establish new procedures, restrictions, and policies for electronic attendance of state agency governing body meetings through amendments to sections of Indiana Code 514. In order to be in compliance with this act, JRAC, again, I believe at this time, should adopt a policy to address participation by members who cannot attend in person. A proposed policy was sent to members for review, and at this time, I would welcome any feedback and comments. If we decide to go forward, approval of the plan will require a roll call vote. And so if that becomes appropriate, I'm going to ask Jenny Bauer to conduct a roll call vote at the appropriate time. But before we get into any roll call, are there any questions, concerns, comments from members of JRAC?
This is Bernice. I did look at the proposed virtual policy, and there are little spaces where, yeah, we can make decisions. And so the number 2, limiting the meeting limit on electronic participation, no more than blank. Members may attend a meeting through electronic communications. I assume that means, right, for that particular meeting. And my recollection is it used to be that there were limitations on how many times a person could do it within a year. And so I don't see that here, and I think that's a good thing. But I do think the number is probably limited by the preceding paragraph, which says a quorum has to be in person. So I don't remember how many members are on JRAC, but I guess the answer to number 2 is less a quorum, since a quorum has to be present.
Yeah, and any members of council who had a hand in drafting this, feel free to speak out otherwise. But my thought when we looked at this was in line with what Bernice just indicated. My initial thought was that I understand we have to have a quorum in person. And so to give maximum flexibility, I thought we would have, the highest number possible could attend remotely. That would still allow for a quorum. And then kind of in that same vein, when we get to item, the blank number 3 and 5, allow us again, just as much flexibility as we could getting up to that deadline to, shift back to a remote if we needed to. And I thought that was important anyway, just because, throughout the last year and a half, things just changed so rapidly that, I think it just sort of goes hand in glove with, the nature of having to have this policy. We want to provide ourselves with as much flexibility as we can so that the work of the group is not interrupted.
Justice Goff, this is Mary Kay. Rich Payne from our office drafted this policy, and part of it was in consultation with the Public Access Counselor's office. And so we're happy to incorporate a time or a number of members under number 2 that does allow for maximum flexibility, meaning the most number of individuals possible to participate remotely in order that still permits an in-person quorum. Obviously, that's going to be dependent on how many people are on the council. So I think we've added 2 members. So I think we're at 21 now, but we can do that math within the Office of Court Services and update the policy appropriately.
Mary Kay, I have a quick question. In terms of paragraph 3, how many days in advance would be helpful to the staff? Because obviously, if a person gives notice too close to the meeting, then it's going to be challenging to try to scramble to get maybe another member to show up in person to make quorum. Does staff have a recommendation there?
Well, I mean, I think there's going to be some logistics associated with this. That April will probably be the person who experiences, as we put this in place, what the variations on this will be. I would say, for the purposes of being able to secure technology for a hybrid, what is essentially a hybrid meeting, partially in person. And I think what we would need to do is, for the foreseeable future, plan to have a hybrid meeting. So that makes the technology piece easier. And then once we have individuals who report to us that they have a need to appear remotely, we'll just kind of have to keep that tally and say, okay, to the last person who says, I would like to appear remotely. Well, this puts us over the threshold of having an in-person quorum. So, I think we're going to have to just be able to navigate that. And this is true, though, really, of any time we have a meeting whether it's in person or not, there can be changes in people's personal circumstances that prevent them from coming to meeting, or professional circumstances where we run the risk of not having a quorum. So I don't know that this will necessarily be a new problem. It's just a new spin on a problem that we'll just have to watch. So if I had to say, notice within, 24 hours, a day's notice of the meeting would be helpful.
I was going to suggest 48, but if you guys think you can. do
Well, I mean,
48.
I think again, from the technology standpoint, if we assume that we're going to need to have the technology available, because it does require a special camera setup and all that other stuff, it really just comes down to maybe the desire of the chair, Justice Goff, as to how much notice you want to give other members that there's a risk of not having a quorum for a meeting. So whether you prefer that be 48 hours in advance or closer to the time of the meeting, I think our office is flexible on that. I think that's more of a chair's discretion than logistics issue.
I hope I'm not muted. Am I muted?
No.
Okay, no, I'm not. So Mary Kay, I know your office's capability to react to quorum or no quorum for conference committee meetings, because we judges travel to those all the time. And so from that standpoint, I think that a day would be enough. But given that we have so many members of JRAC that are not part of the judiciary, and so many folks would have to travel from a far distance, why don't we go ahead, if there's no objection to it, and indicate 2 days, 48 hours, because I know it might be appreciated if we got in a situation where we could not have a quorum. Folks might appreciate having knowing that a day ahead of time so they can make other plans. Is that reasonable? Does anybody have any objections to that before we call for the question?
I have a question.
Yes, Senator.
Question, comment. Let me tell you the 30-second story about the time that I was on I-65 headed to a meeting in Indy, in my car, stuck in traffic for 3 hours. Just saying, I had every intention of being at this meeting. This kind of thing could arise at any time. So I would just suggest that we leave ourselves an out by saying that, as long as it doesn't disrupt the rest of the rules, that the chair has the discretion in an emergency to allow somebody to participate who has not given 48 hours notice. Just something like that, because I then participated in this meeting from the parking lot of I-65 by my phone. So, I like to leave discretion for things like that. So just suggesting we put something in there like that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, and particularly if it doesn't jeopardize our ability to have the meeting at all in the quorum, then I think that would be a wise addition. Thank you, Senator.
Justice Goff, may I make a statement about number 4?
Yes, please.
What talks about individual member limits, and Rich has a reference to some statutes. This isn't really this is not a section for which JRAC has the ability to make any policy on or adopt any policy on. But I just want to highlight that there are some pretty specific provisions in the statutes about voting procedures and final votes and deciding votes and those kinds of things that when the time comes, we will need to follow, that are not listed here just for the sake of brevity in this document. And there's nothing that we can change about them, so we didn't list them. But when we come to our next meeting, if we have remote participation, we will need to be aware of those and follow those.
Understood. Thank you. And the other blank that's left in the document pertains to a requirement that any member who attends remotely would have to confirm their votes in writing to the chair within a certain number of days. And I'm certainly open to granting as much flexibility with that as possible. We want to make sure that any action taken by the council that was going to have implications, in particular strong time sensitivity. We want to, of course, be cognizant of that. But would I guess the number comes to my mind is 5 days, 7 days, something like that. Not hearing any objections.
The question that I would have is the council able to actually act on decisions prior to receiving that confirmed vote, Justice Goff? I don't know the answer to that question. But if there's something that is time sensitive, and if we can consider an email confirmation or a written notice or confirmation of a vote, I would say a shorter time frame if the council has to wait to receive those votes in writing before taking action would be helpful.
Do you have a specific number in mind, Mary Kay? You think 48 hours then, something like that?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
But Justice Goff, if I may, I think since most of our meetings are on a Friday, you might want to extend that to 72. So the following Monday would be the time to maybe get the confirmation in.
That's a good thought, Troy. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's fine by me. I'd want to give folks as much time as we can, but Mary Kay makes a good point. So if there's, we can settle on 72, why don't we indicate that?
I think if there's something that's particularly time sensitive, Justice Goff, we can communicate that to members during the meeting and ask for them to submit it more quickly than 72 hours.
Yeah, we know where to find them when the pandemic's over, right?
This is Devin. Just a logistics question on this number 5. Do you want just an email to the group? Do you want to produce some sort of form that we send in? Do you want a signature on it? How do we want to do that?
I would want an email if that suffices, Devin. But what I would do at the end of the meeting is I'd probably get a separate opinion from our counsel to make sure that they think that meets the requirements of the statute. I wouldn't want to jeopardize the legitimacy of our action because we missed something. I can't imagine it wouldn't be email, but that's my thought on it.
Okay.
Appreciate you raising it though. Yeah. And frankly, if we do need something more, I would ask him or her to generate a form and certainly introduce it to all of you and let you know ahead of time why, what, and make it as easy as possible. But yeah, my thought would be a simple email. Well, good. Are there any other questions then about the form and the proposed policy? Any further discussion? Well, I think then we have probably about as much information as we can. This remains sort of a part of the new reality. And I apologize for the cumbersome conversation that we have to have on so many of these things. But again, our concern within the judicial family is simply that we're able to carry on this important work with all of our important justice partners and thereby serve our citizens and constituents. So I would ask Jenny then, if she would, to go ahead and start the process of a roll call vote so that we can consider whether or not to adopt the policy.
Okay, thank you, Justice Goff. I'm just going to start with the order that the statute has. So Bernice Corley,
Aye.
Chris Naylor,
Yes.
Jay Chaudhry,
Yes.
did Brett Clark or Steve Luce join the call? I don't think so. Christine Blessinger,
Yes.
Mary Kay Hudson,
Yes.
Devin McDonald,
Yes.
Amber Finnegan,
Yes.
Troy Hatfield,
Yes.
Kristen Haney,
Yes.
David Bodorf,
Yes.
Aaron Dolahanty,
Yes.
Andrew Cullen,
Yes.
Karen Talion.
Yes,
Do we have Wendy McNamara? I don't think I saw her join. Nope. Douglas Hunsinger,
Yes.
Steve McCaffrey.
Yes.
$15 yeses.
So unanimous. And again, thank you, all members of the staff in putting that together in short order. And thank you, Senator Talion, for bringing these issues to our attention. And thank you all for your continued flexibility in these challenging times. What I'd like to do next then is move on to our next agenda item, and that is member reports. And I kind of wanted to let everyone know that we thought about a bit of a change in format for our meetings. And for this meeting and future meetings, this area of the agenda will occur just slightly differently in that members will have an opportunity to share information. However, each agency will not be required to provide an individual report out. If there is a particular item that you would like to share during a meeting and anticipate it will take substantial time, please send this information to April to add as an individual agenda item. And I just say this because there have been so many really important collaborative projects that have been undertaken by JRAC over the past year, most of which are at least touched upon in our EBDM report that we voted approval for with those recommendations. We'd really like to begin devoting a little bit more time to those items of common concern so we can have a little bit of a more in-depth discussion of those items going forward. Just our thought about really being able to internalize some of the work of these work groups, and we welcome discussion about that. But for now then, I would ask any individual members if you have any report outs on behalf of your organizations. Are there any report outs?
I have one, Justice.
Yeah. Hello, Devin.
Yes, real brief. So I just wanted to report out that we did submit the report to the Legislative Council and to the General Assembly's website on the number of individuals released OR or less than $1,000 bond as required by, I think it was 268, if I recall, the Senate bill. I would actually say it's probably more of a white paper than it is a report. It's pretty brief, just based on the availability of the information. But what we do highlight in it is the fact that there is no information currently available and the difficulties that we had. Anecdotally speaking, one of the counties that we were finally able to get some data from, they had to actually go through their data by hand with pen and paper and write names down and what happened, but they did it and they submitted an entire year's worth of data. So, kudos to them. I really appreciated that effort, but we did submit that. One of the topics that we've discussed many times as well is the data project that we're working on with DOC for the victim notification system. We are making some progress on that. Contracts have already been engaged in. We're in the process now at CJI of signing non-disclosure agreements and data share agreements with the counties to get that information. So hopefully, that data will start flowing here within the next 4 to 5 months, hopefully.
That's great. Well, Devin, we continue to appreciate all of your hard work and the partnership of the Criminal Justice Institute. So thank you very much for that report out. Mm-hmm. Do any members have any questions for Devin? Thank you. Are there any other report outs on behalf of members?
Justice Goff, I have one. I just wanted to share a good story because I think we don't do that enough. So of something working, right? And so as you probably know, at DMAJ, we provide, we call them mini grants to law enforcement to send their officers through CIT training. And so as part of one of these grants, the Columbus Police Department and the Bartholomew County Police Department sent 5 officers to Boone County's CIT class in April. And so about 2 weeks ago, a couple of the officers were out on a call in Bartholomew County, and they responded to a man threatening to jump from a bridge. And, he was very distrustful of law enforcement. And these 2 officers that attended the class, spent 45 minutes using kind of the skills and training that they learned during that class, this kind of cross collaboration with Boone County, and were able to talk this person literally down from the ledge, and take him to the place he needed to get help. And so it was resolved peacefully with no injury. And just like an example, I think of we talk a lot about these things in theory, but this is an example of, I think, in practice, how this collaboration and these efforts saved a life. So I just wanted to share.
Yeah, that's great, Jay. Thank you so much for doing that. And yeah, it's wonderful to hear about these agencies that are taking advantage of this training that's actually out there and putting it to real life-saving use. That's a wonderful story. Thank you.
Justice Goff, this is Bernice.
Bernice.
Jay, thank you for sharing that story. That's fantastic. Really glad to hear it. In terms of our update from the council, it's more of a report about collaborative work. IPAC and IPDC are working together to develop training and recommended motions and proposed orders around 1199. That's a bill that passed in this most recent session that deals with driving while suspended and help people get back on the road legally. So I just wanted to share that. And it's not just IPAC, it's IPAC, IPDC, BMV, court services, legal services, and a host of other organizations I can't think of right now. But hopefully we'll have a really well-developed training coming up for all the stakeholders, all the disciplines, as well as toolkits that people can use as model matters to be filed and used. Thanks, Judge.
Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate knowing about that. And, both organizations' ongoing commitment to carry out this joint training, I think is really just critical to the whole system. Anyone else?
Justice Goff, I thought I would give an update on the grants.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, please.
Yeah, so we received in community corrections grants about $90 million in grant requests for this cycle. 258 programs have been applied for with 13 new program requests. Now, last year we gave $69 million in grants. So, clearly we're probably going to have to, be able to look at that. We're not going to be able to probably fund all of those requests, but, in order to help with that situation, we are in partnership working with our stakeholders, especially we've been meeting with court services to talk about the pretrial requests and some other stakeholders. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there. As far as our facilities, I thought I would let everybody know that we have begun to have volunteers come in at this point. Haven't had any issues with that. Things are going pretty smoothly so far with that. The other thing, I know I've been asked, been asked questions about visits. And we are at this point in time for our facilities, we are planned to start in-person non-contact visits starting on August 30th. But, as everybody knows with the rise in numbers that we may have to reevaluate that as time goes on. But I just kind of wanted to let everybody know because right now that announcement has been made. So I know that's been on our website and we've let others know. So I just wanted to make sure you all were in the loop on that too. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you for that update, Chris. It's so important to so many of us, and appreciate all your work on the community corrections work group as well. I've seen a lot of you the past several months, know how busy you've been. Senator.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the criminal code committee, the hearings haven't started yet, but they have been scheduled. And I just want to bring to everybody's attention, we've recently received a lot of let's just say there's a lot of noise going on out there right now about pretrial release. The FOP has taken a position that it is, I assume everybody knows this. Shake your head. I assume everybody knows that's going on. I expect there to be a lot of discussion about this. And maybe this is a topic that this group ought to look at and make recommendations about. There is a lot of discrepancy between pretrial release of quote violent offenders and release of nonviolent offenders. And we don't want all of those sort of bail reform laws for nonviolent offenders to get caught up in this latest problem. So we might want to take a look at that.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you bringing up that very timely discussion. Are there any questions for Senator Talion from members of JRAC? Well, hearing none, Senator, I expect if we don't have any other report outs, if we do, I certainly welcome them. But I appreciate your comments because I think it's important to tie together the work of this group with the important work that I hope is going to take place over the next several years through the implementation of local JRACs. Because as everyone on this call knows, the problems that plague our criminal justice system are complex, and there's a great deal of interest by the public because crime affects the public, and everybody wants to live in a safe place. Everybody wants to work in a safe place. But what I appreciate about the ability that we have to come together as a group, as different stakeholders, is that we can have this discussion and come to consensus on items that are very important and serve to educate the public on the work that's being done and the policies that are actually in place. And what I hope will come in the next several years is an increased ability for our communities to carry out that same type of conversation through this statutory infrastructure that's now been created in local JRACs. I think that this state level partnership is going to become increasingly important. And I hope that every one of you and every one of your constituent agencies continues to engage as you have so that we can keep Hoosiers safe and so that we can implement the fairest and most efficient system possible. Thank you for that, Senator. Are there any other report outs? Kristen,
Justice
Kirsten,
Goff,
hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So one of the things that we're working on in SBA is what the internal controls and reporting requirements are going to be for those federally funded appropriations in the budget bill. So we did just receive Treasury guidance. We're starting to go through that. SBA is working on putting together PowerPoint webinars, training, everything to make this as easy and less work on agencies as much as possible. So that should be coming over the next month or so. I know it affects some of the individuals on this, so I just wanted to share with the group. On a personal note, I'm probably going to be going on maternity leave 6 or 7 weeks, so we'll have a different person from SBA that's going to be standing in this role. I should be back literally like 12:28, back in time for session. Good or bad thing, I'm not sure yet, but I will be back eventually by the time of January. So just a personal note there.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kirsten, thank you throughout all these challenging times and personal challenge for you. I just appreciate you keeping all of us up to speed with the budgetary considerations, and we wish you all the best as you add this addition to your family. So congratulations and thank you.
Dave Ballroff, I did have a question for Kirsten. Will they, your training, is it going to be online and be recorded videos that we can share with county auditors and others who might have to follow the federal guidelines on reporting?
Yep, great question. That's one of the things we're going to do, just because there are so many appropriations that go from state agency to locals. So it'll be really helpful for everyone to have that same information. So we'll do it in a form of recorded webinar that can be shared throughout multiple entities.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, David. Anyone else?
Hi, Justice. Chris Naylor.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, not necessarily a report out, but just maybe a comment to add on to Senator Tallien's statements. I think one thing that we've not discussed recently as a group is the concept of preventative detention, which is an EBDM component. And there was discussion, when Indiana started this process, but we've not made much progress in that area, haven't taken specific steps in the last, year to 18 months. And I know the pandemic has slowed our progress, but that is a key concept that we need to consider. Do we take it up, and how do we take it up that would clearly distinguish violent offenders from a non-violent offender? So I know it's not on the agenda today, and maybe that's something we take up in the EBDM subgroup, but I wanted to get that back on our radar.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from JRAC members for Chris?
I think just to follow up with that, when we talk about the use of money as far as release and how it has no effect on people coming back to court or not, and dangerous people get out because they can afford it, and poor people stay in because they can't afford it and stuff. But the reason I think why people are struggling with this is because there isn't preventative detention. And if there was preventative detention, then I think the money bill could go away. And maybe I'm being naive, but I think that's the only reason why we're still holding on to it, is that, the dangerous people need to stay in and the other people need to be released regardless of financial status. So I appreciate Chris bringing that up, because at the local level, that is a struggle and a challenge.
Thank you, Amber. In keeping with sort of the change in format and moving away from the individual report outs to discussions about items of mutual concern, I would tell you that this is one of those items, right? This is one of those items that I think, if we're going to use JRAC to its potential, that we need to have these discussions in earnest. And in speaking and planning the meeting out with our internal staff, I am cognizant of the number of work groups that we have, and I think that's important. But I think between now and the next meeting, we probably need to pay some close attention to the structure of these agenda items and the structure of our work groups and their various charges. And I say that because I think it would be helpful for us to have as much opportunity as possible to come together and have some meaningful discussions in time for the legislators to act or decide to take other action. So that I think it's important that you brought that up, Chris. I think it's always good to hear how these things really affect our communities, Amber. So I appreciate you both bringing that to the group's attention. Anyone else? Well, I neglected to acknowledge Andrew Cullen, who is also here as a proxy for the Public Defender Commission. So thank you, Andrew, for participating today. This is the last really substantive agenda item that we had to cover today. And if there is no further discussion in terms of our report outs, I would ask members if there's any other business that you would bring to the attention of the council. Anything else, folks? Well, I appreciate your participation today. And the next scheduled JRAC meeting is for Friday, October the 29th from 10 to 12. If health conditions continue to permit, we do plan to conduct the meeting in person. If information we provided, however, as we get closer to the meeting date. I appreciate your taking the time to participate in today's meeting and your service to your communities and to the state of Indiana. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care, folks.
Thank you.